Our first presenter of the third session here is Kaytee Ankrom. She is a PhD student in biology. I would have drawn this out until we got Marilee back in place. And she knew she wanted to study nematodes. We're going right from guppies to nematodes. When she realized they were everywhere and that she had never heard of them. She hopes to ultimately work for the EPA, which I think could be interesting. And I loved her title, which is a bit of a pun, if you didn't catch it, global warming.
Climate change is a daily fixture in our news cycle. Whether it's an epic hurricane barreling down on the East Coast, fires raging out west, or more recently, a polar vortex terrorizing the middle of the country, it's a problem. Thankfully, 40% of our Earth's surface is covered in grasslands. And these grasslands don't only serve as majestic hiking spots for us, they can also actually help combat climate change. The grasses are able to absorb CO2 from our atmosphere, transfer that carbon below ground, safely tucking it away into the roots and soil. And globally speaking, these soils can then hold twice the amount of carbon that our atmosphere does. Of course, climate change doesn't only concern the carbon cycle. Altered precipitation patterns, especially out here in water-limited Colorado, are of great concern. And experts in the field predict less frequent, more intense rainstorms are in store for our U.S. western grasslands. And while soil water changes alone will affect these plants and their ability to store carbon for us, the title of this talk is global warming. And while that pun is awful, these worms are not. So let me introduce you to the most important animal you've never heard of, the nematode. This roundworm is so prevalent, 4 out of every 5 animals on the earth are categorized as a nematode. And soil nematodes are particularly important as there's a nematode for every soil drop available. But the role that I'm interested in studying is that of plant parasite. Plant parasitic nematodes are essentially vampires to the grasses. They suck out nutrients and can actually consume more plant tissue than above ground grazing herbivores, such as cattle, despite being microscopic in size. Let that sink in for a second. An animal that is maybe 1 millimeter long is out eating a 2,000-pound cow. But not all plant parasites are created equal, and they don't all harm the root in the same way. Some of these nematodes have longer mouth parts that can attack the root from outside, ever so gently grazing nutrients, and will eat any root that they encounter. While other nematodes actually burrow into the root and wreak havoc as they bust through plant cells, and much like any 5-year-old you know, they are extremely picky eaters. And while our study actually shows that these root-entering nematodes, the particular and fussy 5-year-olds, are unaffected by water precipitation changes, their populations stay stable whether they're hit with droughts or floods. And that's a really important finding from our study, because not only do these root-entering nematodes cause more damages to the grasses they infect, their selection preference could change plant species in our western U.S. grasslands. Namely, our fibrous grasses, with their great ability to hold onto carbon, could be replaced by woodier, hardier plants, as well as invasive annuals that can combat these parasites better, but hold onto carbon less efficiently. So what we can't see can hurt us, and it can also change the look of our Instagrammed hiking photos.